Like so many young fighters, UK heavyweight prospect Daniel Dubois says that he was inspired by Mike Tyson. He said that when he was a kid, his dad used to sit him down in front of Mike Tyson videos and various other heavyweight champions from history, Lennox Lewis, Muhammad Ali, so on and so forth. But Tyson was a guy who he was really impressed with, and he says he hopes to emulate Mike Tyson. Bear in mind, Daniel Dubois, I believe, is like 6'4", 6'5". Mike Tyson's 5'10". But it's a similar situation to Anthony Joshua, who's a very big heavyweight, 6'6". He was also inspired by Mike Tyson. He said that's the person who made him want to box. And when he first went down to a gym, he was trying to emulate Tyson's style. But his coaches told him, look, you're 6'6". You're not 5'10" like Tyson. You can't fight like that. But anyway, Tyson is definitely an inspirational figure, has been for a very long time. I've never seen, in my personal lifetime, I've never seen anything as fanatical as Tyson mania, because I lived through the whole Tyson era. I was watching all Tyson's fights live, and the impact that he had on the game just in terms of fan interest was incredible. I mean, you even see it today. How many fighters who retired long ago, I can't remember exactly when it was Tyson retired, but it was, you know, a long time ago, and his prime was in the late 80s. Mid to late 80s was Tyson's prime. How many fighters who had their prime in the mid to late 80s are still relevant today in terms of the young generation looking up to them? Nobody, really. It's only Tyson that had that type of impact. Anyway, I'm going to quote Daniel Dubois directly. He's talking about Tyson and whatnot. He says, and by the way, he's also talking about trying to break Herbie Hyde's record as the youngest British fighter to ever win a heavyweight title. And that record is 22 years and 6 months. He can't beat Mike Tyson's record as the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. It was very unlikely anyway. Tyson was 20 years old and 4 months when he became the youngest ever champion. Daniel Dubois is already 19 years old. Tyson turned pro 18. So anyway, let me quote Daniel Dubois. He says, I definitely believe I can be, and he's referring to being the youngest Brit heavyweight champion. He says, I definitely believe I can be. Everyone wants to be champion of the world, and that is the ultimate goal. He goes on to talk about his dad here. Dubois says, he used to sit me in front of video tapes of Mike Tyson and Lennox Lewis. I would also watch a lot of Frank Bruno. I really liked Bruno. The heavyweight division fascinated me. Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, all those guys. I would watch Mike Tyson documentaries over and over. My dad then brought me down the gym. I started enjoying it once I started winning titles. I started enjoying it, and once I started winning titles, I started to love it even more. Anything can happen in 3 or 4 years. It's all about timing, and I feel this is my time. I believe I made the right decision. And to interject there, he's talking about his decision to turn pro. So, he continues on here. This is the last bit of the quote here from Daniel Dubois. He says, I want to prove myself in the ring before making comparisons. I want to prove myself, and then maybe can say stuff like that about me. So those are the words of Daniel Dubois, talking about who inspired him to box. He was being interviewed here, so I'll leave the link in the description below. He was being interviewed, I believe, by the Daily Star newspaper in the UK. So yeah, apparently he's inspired by Mike Tyson. Now, I personally like the fact that Daniel Dubois is so young, turning professional. And the reason why I say that is because, particularly these days, but even throughout history, you can pick out examples of fighters who left their athletic prime in the amateurs, who missed the boat in terms of being able to capitalize on their athletic prime as professionals. There are even some great fighters throughout history who reached their peak in terms of being at the top of their game and achieving their highest heights when they were past their athletic peak. Lennox Lewis is actually a good example of that. When Lennox Lewis was undisputed champion, he was not in his athletic prime. He might have been at his best in terms of technical ability, strategy, experience, confidence, technique maybe, but he wasn't the same athlete when he was undisputed champion, when he beat Holyfield and went on to beat Michael Grant, Francois Botha, etc., David Tua, he wasn't the same athlete then that he was earlier on in his career when he was in his 20s. When he beat the likes of Razor Ruddock. When he fought Razor Ruddock, you go look at that fight. Look how fast Lewis is on his feet. Look at his hand speed. Look at his coordination. Look how snappy his punches are. That was a Lewis who is far more athletic than the Lewis who fought Shannon Briggs or many of the other fighters that he faced later on in his career. Lewis turned professional, I believe, I think he was 23, 24, something like that maybe. So, relatively late, but particularly for the time, because fighters were turning pro a lot earlier than that back then. And yeah, his technical confidence and all that type of business prime was a lot later than his athletic prime. And I think for a fighter to reach their true potential, their athletic prime and their, for a lack of a better term, I'll call it technical prime. Their athletic prime and their technical prime need to happen at the same time. And when you've got a guy as young as Dubois, I think that's more possible because he's 19. So by the time he's learned everything he needs to learn, got all the experience he needs to get, has the confidence, so on and so forth, he'll probably be in his mid-20s by then. So he'll still be within that window of his athletic prime. Yeah? Mid to late 20s, you can be in your absolute athletic peak. And at the same time, hopefully be in his technical peak. So that's why I like fighters turning young like this. It's not right for everybody, don't get it twisted. But personally, as somebody who wants to see fighters fulfill their potential, this is something which I think is actually quite important. Again, it's not essential, but I think it's going to be more difficult for you. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It's been done. But I think it's going to be more difficult for you to become a top level fighter when you're past your athletic prime than it is when you're in your athletic prime. So let me not labor the point too much here, people. Maybe just in closing, say a few things about Tyson. Again, he was an inspirational figure. And as I say, how many fighters do you know that were in their prime in the 80s and are still held in high regard today in 2017 by the young generation? People who were born in the late 90s, early 2000s are looking up to Tyson. You know, he really had a massive impact on the game, and it really was to do with his style. Tyson is a good example, you know, obviously, of somebody who had their athletic prime and their technical prime at the same time, because again, he turned professional very young, 18 years old. So by the time he was in his early 20s, you know, 21, 22, he was in his technical prime, as good as he was ever as a professional technically, and he was also in his athletic prime. So anyway, let me stop waffling. Drop your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you feel about Daniel Dubois. It's impossible to know how far he's going to go, but maybe some of you have some inkling about how far you think he can go. Very big man, a 21st century heavyweight, built like a very big house. I don't know what they're feeding these kids these days to get them this size at this young. I definitely wish him all the best, and I'll be watching his career with interest. So let me know what you feel. It's happening. I'm out.